Yeah, good to be back home. Looking forward to playing in front of the jungle. Just a reminder, you can get your Outlive shirts at outlive.org. I think the South Carolina game we set a record for in-game sales. So just would encourage everybody to continue to support a phenomenal cause, and we're looking for 100% participation in that game. So on to Texas. While I said Florida was the best team in our league, this is the most dangerous team in our league, and it's not even close in my opinion. They have 4 guys that account for 70% of their offensive production, and they have a bunch of guys that just understand what they're supposed to be doing out there in their roles. They have 3 guards that can beat you on any given night, that all do different things at a very, very high level. They have beaten more top 25 teams than anyone in our conference, with 4 top 25 wins. They have a top 10 offense nationally. They're one of the best rebounding teams in college basketball. In their wins, they're plus 16 in rebounds, and in their losses, they're plus 1. So, we got to have the same intention that we did against Florida as far as rebounding the basketball, because they do a great job of going to get it. Tremont Mark, we played against him when he was at Houston. We went to the NCAA tournament with Janai his first year, and he beat us by himself. And Dalen Swain is a man, and just does so many things well. Gets the rim, can finish through contact, rebounds it, passes it. Jordan Pope has had multiple games this year where if you look at Alabama against NC State and a couple others where he's just taking the game over. And Invokatitis is just a handful down there. So they got 4 just phenomenal players that are going to do a lot of really good things for them. So it's been keeping me up at night because they're probably the most talented team is from a guard standpoint that we've played up to this point. Just as far as all the different things that those guys are capable of doing. So gonna have our hands full. We're gonna really have to sit down and guard our yard, and not require a ton of help. So one of the best one-on-one teams in the country as far as what those guards do. And then they have probably the most improved big in college basketball. He was at FAU last year, and we played him in a scrimmage here, and to see him then to where he's at now, they've done a phenomenal job just kind of improving his game. And he leads the country in fouls drawn per 40 minutes. He draws 10 fouls every 40 minutes. That's nuts. So does a great job of using his body for steals, and they do a great job of finding them. So, and not to mention they have a guy that played at Purdue with Camden that's from a winning program and shoots damn near 50% from 3. So they got some pieces. Their top 8 is really good, and our guys are gonna have some special to come out and get another one.
As you were saying, like when you play a team like this, how big is it with your one-on-one defense? Like I know you guys want to load into gaps and have help, but how big is this? Just saying, hey, just keep the guy in front of you, from beating you.
Yeah, it's about as important as any game this year. Just not having to require a ton of help. It's easier said than done because those guys are really good at setting up their drives and getting you on angles and scoring on angles. So our guys have got to do a great job of just sitting down, being in a stance, recognizing who can shoot it and who can't. We got to be disciplined in our closeouts, and we just got to understand who we can and can't help off of, and we just got to be connected. Got to be super connected defensively against a team like this, because if you aren't, they'll make you pay.
Steve, talk about the last few games. You guys have been in control of a lot of those games versus maybe Georgia. You're kind of trying to come back. A&M was topsy-turvy, but the last 3, it seems like you've had good starts and you've been in control most of the games. Just talk about how that's the impact that makes and what you can take from that.
Yeah, I think the last 3 specifically, I think we did a better job of just executing the things that we talked about in the game plan offensively, as far as what we thought would work. And scoring early and scoring late and not playing off 1 foot and playing off 2 feet's been really good for us. We've got to continue to do that. And, I think a big part of it is just our defense has just been a lot more solid and has allowed us to, not just have to continuously take the ball out of the net. And we've been able to get some stops and get some rebounds and, get out and create some advantage and, be able to run some stuff and make them cover, and done a pretty good job of executing. Even though we haven't shot it great, we've done a great job of attacking the rim and playing off 2 and getting to the foul line, and we're making free throws. So that obviously all ties into being able to have better starts, and obviously 2 of those being on the road in really hostile environments. So guys done a better job, early in games. That was a concern for us leading up to the, after the first 2 SEC games. But our guys have done a better job, and we've got to continue to in order to, beat the best teams on our schedule.
Steve, how much has a healthy Murph added to you guys on both ends of the court, and what are you seeing out of him really offensively and defensively?
Yeah, it's been huge. I talked to Todd after the game, and he's like, I had no idea how athletic Murph was. And I was like, yeah, that's when he's healthy, that's what he looks like. So that just kind of, and that speaks volumes in itself when it comes from Todd like that, because he obviously has some phenomenal bigs on his roster. So it just, it improves everything that he does. When he's jumping, he's able to finish around the rim, he's able to block shots, he's able to get rebounds, and those are all the things that we need him to be able to do. And, a healthy Murph has obviously, allowed us to win 4 out of our last 5. But it's not just him, like him and Phillip have been just really, really good down there. And they got to continue, can't let success change us. We got to stay consistent with everything that we've been doing, and those 2 guys have to continue to do the things that have been proven to be effective, because it's helped us win some games.
Steve, you guys had a tight game the other day out. I think Keyshawn went the distance, damn near 40 minutes, and then Tahad went off at 20 seconds, I think, in the second half. Will you continue to be like that if these games are close? Stick with the guys that got you here and play the heck out of them like that?
Why did Key play why did he go the whole distance like that?
He had to.
Yeah, because he was
we had some guys that had foul trouble. Key is a guy that's in great shape, and while Key is playing heavy minutes, he's well conditioned to play those minutes. And I think he missed 2 checkouts in the Florida game as opposed to 20 in the previous game. So it's every single possession he was going to hit somebody. And for us to be able to compete with a team like Florida, it requires that type of effort. So Key's in great shape. Tahad, I think, played 36, and that's probably 3 more than what I would like for him to play. We need Blake to be able to be out there for a little bit longer than what he was. He got put out there in some difficult stretches when Florida kind of made their runs, and it had nothing to do with Blake being out there. It was just, they kind of had some momentum in those swings, and Tahad got back in. So, Tahad's, sweet spot is probably between 32 and 34. But Key, we trust Key to be able to be out there for a majority of the game when we need him to. Would it be nice to not have to play him 38 minutes? Absolutely. But, this league is going to require us to, have to shorten our rotation a little bit and play guys more minutes than what they're used to. So that's why we, kind of limit what we do in practice, because we need those guys to be fresh and furious for games.
KO led y'all in plus minus the other night, 26 minutes. It seems like last few games, his defense has been really a key part of that. How big has he been as y'all have gotten so good over these last few games on the defensive end?
Yeah, it'd be great if he could stay out of foul trouble. I think he's been in foul trouble early the last 2. Just he got two quick ones in the Florida game after like a 8-minute rotation, and we need him to be out there. But no, he really sits down and guards, and you saw what he did against Ole Miss with AJ Story. He was 6 for 19, and KO's on him a majority of that game. KO is going to have his hands full again with Swain, Mark, and Pope, all really, really, really talented scoring guards. All of our guards have got to actually all 5 guys have got to step up in this game and defend. And it starts with KO because he's the guy that kind of sets the tone. And when KO sits down and gets wide and gets in a stance and plays physically and jump contests every time, he's a difference maker. His body language the last 2 games was so damn good. He was just so calm, and he, I think our guys fed off of that. We had, I think, double-digit leads in both games that got cut down to 1 possession or tied. And both times in the huddle, I thought everybody was very composed and did a good job of communicating constructively, and we were able to find ways to, extend those leads back out, and I thought KO was a big part of that.
shooting 82% from the line as a team these last 3 games. I know we talked about how big it was against Florida, but to see the team as a whole, you know, not just he going to the line a ton, but everybody kind of contributing, how big has that been for y'all?
Yeah, it's the difference in winning and losing. You know, we don't win all 3 games if we don't shoot that percentage from the free throw line. Or it's a lot closer than, you know, a 12-point win at Ole Miss and a 9-point win at Florida and however many we won by against South Carolina. So, you know, it's the difference in winning and losing, especially on the road. And, you know, our guys we've just been consistent in our routine. Like, we haven't changed anything. You know, we just continuously do what we do in practice, and our guys done a good job stepping up. And, you know, obviously, when Murph goes 12 for 13 in the last 2 games, that makes a huge difference. You know, Todd, I don't think missed a free throw in the last 2 games. KO made all those free throws. So the guys that have consistently been stepped up and making them have continued to make them, and a couple guys that haven't, you know, been shooting great percentages have stepped up and made some big ones. And, you know, Phillip and Murph specifically made some huge free throws in the last 2 games that were able to help us kind of push the leads up.
Even last week, 2-0 on the road. I mean, you got to think in SEC play, not many teams are probably going to have a 2 in a week on the road. It's almost like you're picking up a game on the league. But, like, how
2.
important is that? Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
How important is that, especially when you talk about, you kind of mentioned this team maybe not even winning that game 3 weeks ago, and then now you go 2-0 on the road in a week in league play. Like, what does that say about just the growth that you've seen so far?
Yeah, we've just I've said it since, you know, since I got the job. Like, if this team can continue to get better every single week, this team has a chance. And I think this team has done that for the most part, especially since we got back from Christmas. We took 1 step back, and that was the Missouri game, but I thought even that week we had great practices. We've had really good practices every single day. We've stayed consistent in what we're doing with our preparation and our routine leading up to games. But no, I mean, road wins count as 2, and that Florida game may have counted as 3. You know, just because I don't think anyone else is going in there and beating them this year. I don't. You know, Ole Miss has shown to be a really good home team. I think Arkansas is the only team that have gone there and beat them so far this year. So, you know, those are 2 tough places to play. You know, Ole Miss was jam-packed. That was the most people I've ever seen in the O-Dome. So to do it in 2 hostile environments is, you know, it shows that there's been progress made. But what do we do from here? You know, Ole Miss had won 3 games in a row, and then we came in there and beat them. You know, they might have been feeling good about themselves. Florida had won 5 games in a row, and they may have been feeling pretty good about themselves because, as they should, they're really, really good. We came in there and beat them. If we let this thing get to our heads and we don't, you know, get ready for Texas, like, this is, you know, we got to keep that chip on our shoulder. We got to have our backs against the wall. That's the only way that we can play well, and that's what we have to do in order to beat this team because they're so damn talented, and they're the most dangerous team in our league. So we got to stay locked into what we've been doing and continue to play hungry.
Yep.
Want to ask you about Texas on defense. You know, they're more of an offensive team for most of the season, but the last few games they held Georgia to 67, made it to 64, A&M to 74. Just what stood out to them about you, especially these last few games on defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, sometimes when teams are playing well offensively, it can allow their defense to play even better, and we're guilty of that just as much as anybody. And I think Texas has some of that as well. Like, when they're knocking down shots and they're playing with great confidence offensively, then their physicality defensively and their movement defensively gets even better. So it's, you know, it's a game where, you know, we have to be really good defensively, because if they start hitting on all cylinders offensively, that's when they become really, really dangerous defensively, and they show the ability to sit down and guard. And because they're capable, they're very, very capable. And you know, they have good length. You know, they have good size down there. You know, they really loads the ball and try and strip and rip and plug the gaps, and, you know, they're going to make us settle for, they're going to try and make us shoot threes, I'm pretty sure, in this game. And you know, when the ball does go to the rim, you know, Boca Titus is sitting down there, you know, and just trying to get walled up at the rim. So we got to do a great job of all the things that we've talked about the previous weeks, as far as what we're doing offensively, and just executing and staying disciplined in order to score against these guys.